I'm very passionate about, making beautiful things and, the creative process. I love working with my hands, so I just was so excited about what I was doing. I just kept going. I didn't really think about, where it was going to end up. Eric Javitts is a brand that I've developed over a period of, more than 20 years at this point. It started with the idea of hats as head sculpture. Because I was a fine arts major, I went to, art school and studied drawing, painting, and sculpture. And I became interested in the idea of, head sculpture, how various forms would flatter or alter the shape of a woman's face.
Hats is such a personal, unusual little corner of the fashion universe. Why hats? Why not the whole thing?
I was interested in the kind of statement that, a woman who puts something on her head, whether it's for adornment or for function, it makes a statement.
How did you tackle your first hat? Did you go read a book about it, or did you?
Well, I had a friend that I was spending some time with, and she had a sewing machine, and she showed me how to thread it and all that, and she had some fabrics, and so I just kind of used what I had, access to, and made a hat, cut and sew pattern hat. Initial hats were more party hats. They weren't exactly what I'm focusing on today, which is a much more sober approach.
So you were more like theatrical, in other words?
A little bit theatrical, but not totally over the top. Still, anyone could have worn them and felt comfortable in them. The first one, I think, was soft, and it was pleated satin and some velvet. And one design kind of led to another. I mean, I guess, that kind of is a parallel with my painting process, how one canvas can lead to another. It's kind of an evolution. And sometimes you take, bigger steps than at others. My first accounts were basically the department specialty store chains, like Saks Fifth Avenue and Bonwit Tellers. Bonwit Tellers doesn't exist now, yes. But Bergdorf Goodman, I think, was the second store I sold. Yes.
Was it difficult convincing them?
In those days, the industry was a lot more forgiving. They were very excited, actually, to see a young person, interested in doing creative things, and actually were very supportive. At the first store I sold to, they brought them in and sold them all within a couple of days, and then called me up, so I had to figure out how to make more. It's been a journey, to say the least, because we don't really have a tradition in this country of people using their hands and making and being that interested and excited about a craft and making that their livelihoods.
Yes.
So I've had to, find people wherever I could who had some aptitude and train some of them. And almost everyone, that I have in my manufacturing plant has been trained in-house. Shortly after that, I started designing some hats for Carolina Herrera's runway shows around 1984. And when Carolyn Rome was in business, I did a couple of her collections. And sometimes you come up with ideas that, the designer will not have thought of at all, or a silhouette. I remember one time I did some hats for Donna Karan's collection, and I showed her something that I had done that, was completely off on a different tangent than she had anticipated doing, and it worked. After '95, I developed a material called squishy, it's a registered trademark material, and it's a braid. It's squishy.
Okay.
And squishy, it looks just like a natural straw braid, but it's a man-made fiber.
Yes.
And it permits packing and rolling and folding.
Why did you call it squishy?
Because that's what you could do with it. You can squish it and it comes back.
How do you get the form in the hats then?
With roping it onto a wooden block and steaming with steam irons, and then...
Oh, you're kidding. So you go to that sort of trouble?
We're doing it the hardest way possible.
Really? But why? Why?
Because I like the feel of it better. The stamping flattens the material.
Yeah, you're right.
So I like the quality and the feel of everything being hand done the old-fashioned way. What
are the modern hat making techniques? What do you do today?
Well, I'm using a lot of man-made fiber. I use a lot of nylon and polyester. There isn't the degree of a workmanship in a hat today, that there was 40 years ago and 50 years ago.
Right.
And I don't think it's necessary. I mean, that's not how people dress. It doesn't serve their lives, And I'm trying to make hats completely modern, completely accessible. I don't want hats to be up on a pedestal somewhere. I want the customer to see a hat and kind of get it. I do a lot of sketches and diagrams. I cut and stitch things myself to make the patterns, and I carve a lot of the hat blocks myself.
Now, when you say you carve the hat block yourself, or
Well,
do you go to
starting
the
with-
forest and look at a tree?
No. I order blocks of wood
Yeah.
in almost the correct size and shape, and then I just start carving with chisels and files and sandpaper.
Seriously?
Yes. Once I think I'm done, I block something, try it on a lot of heads, and then alter it from there.
What is the difference between handbags and hats?
Most of the time I'm using the same material. So they have to be lightweight, soft, crushable, functional, enough pockets, cell phone pocket, a key clip holder, water repellent.
So the utility
Right.
again.
The utility underscores everything.
But what about the shape and all that? I mean,
The shapes have to be easy. Most of the time I'm just doing more fluid kinds of shapes or bucket shapes. Trial by error, that's been my experience. I mean, sometimes it just takes 6 months to refine one design. Sometimes I start out working on something, I might work on it for 2 months and then just be dissatisfied with it, put it to the side. And then, a few weeks later, I think of something that just brings the whole thing together. Maybe it's some leather piping, or maybe it's, a piece of hardware, or maybe there was something wrong with the proportion of the strap in relationship to the body of the bag. But it's a little bit more of a challenge for me than the hat design thing, because I'm not really as experienced in it. I mean, I have 4 years of experience in it now, and the initial ones were all done with the row-on-row stitching of the braid, which are how my hats are made.
Yes.
So it begins with a block, like the way a hat is, the way we're making our hats.
So you're actually doing that you're making handbags like that?
Handbags on blocks.
You're
right.
kidding?
No.
I don't think I've ever heard of anyone doing it. I don't think they do it like that.
And my first summer bags were all done like that, and my first winter bags actually were made that way too. And then I decided to block the felt into a bag shape, and there were no seams. I had this seamless bag with a handle on it, and actually applied to register that design too, because that was kind of like a breakthrough thing.
Sure.
That things with seams are usually crocheted or knitted or
Exactly.
not molded. An oval-shaped face can wear the most kinds of shapes of hats, but other faces may have a little more trouble. I mean, if you have a very narrow face, you really need a larger brim.
Yes.
And not a tall crown, because a tall crown will elongate a narrow, long face. But you can tell if something's really in harmony, it just clicks. That person looks better in the hat than without it. It's amazing. It's like a hairdo.